Let me ask you this. If a monster said to you, "Kill me and I'll give you my treasure," would you accept? Because that's exactly what Basat faced. But Tepegöz's treasure was worth more than gold. Hello, dear viewers. Today I'll tell you one of the most epic stories from Turkish mythology, the tale of Tepegöz from the Dede Korkut legends. Have you ever heard this story before? Share it with us in the comments. The Tepegöz story begins with love. One of the Oghuz tribe's leaders, Dirsehan, had a beautiful wife. But this woman wasn't an ordinary human. She was a fairy maiden. This marriage between humans and fairies was cursed from the start. When the fairy maiden became pregnant, she saw a terrifying vision in her dream. The child to be born would be a one-eyed giant who would kill thousands of people. When she woke up, she touched her belly and felt that the baby inside her wasn't normal. But it was already too late. When the day of birth came, the midwife fainted as soon as she saw the child, because the baby was born with a single eye in the middle of his forehead. This wasn't an ordinary eye. It glowed like fire, terrifying everyone who looked at it. Dirsehan loved his child, but also feared him. They named the baby Tepegöz. Tepe meaning high, göz meaning that terrible single eye. As the child grew, the power in his eye also increased. At 5 years old, Tepegöz killed his playmate during a game. He had only pushed him with his hand, but the child flew and crashed into rocks. At 7, when he got angry, the light from his eye would burn trees. At 10, he was already as strong as an adult. Dirsehan didn't know what to do. He loved his son, but also had to protect his people. His fairy wife constantly warned, "This child will bring great evil." But how could a father kill his own child? When Tepegöz turned 15, he had become uncontrollable. One day he fought with the village shepherds and killed 3 of them. He could kill just by looking now. The light from his single eye turned people to stone. The council of Oghuz leaders gathered. Everyone wanted Tepegöz to be killed, but Dirsehan wouldn't agree. Finally, they reached an agreement. Tepegöz would be exiled. They would send him to distant mountains, to places where no one lived. But this exile made Tepegöz even more furious. "My family abandoned me. My people rejected me," he said, swearing revenge. From that day on, Tepegöz had become a true monster. He had completely lost his humanity. Tepegöz, who began living in the mountains, grew larger each passing day. He was no longer the size of a normal human. He had reached 3 meters in height, his arm strength greater than a tiger's. His most terrifying aspect was the power in his eye. With his single eye, he could control everything he looked at. He could move stones, uproot, and hurl trees. Animals would flee when they saw him. Birds wouldn't fly. Even the wind would stop. Even nature feared Tepegöz. At first, he only hunted animals. But over time, this wasn't enough. Because Tepegöz's real need was human blood. Since he carried fairy blood, he couldn't sustain himself on normal food. He needed human flesh and blood. Tepegöz's first victim was a young shepherd. The shepherd encountered Tepegöz while grazing his sheep on the mountain. The giant told him, "Don't be afraid, I won't harm you." But when the shepherd looked into his single eye, he turned to stone. Tepegöz tore him apart and ate him. After this incident, strange news began coming from mountain villages. Shepherds were disappearing, flocks of sheep were vanishing, villages were being abandoned. But no one knew why. Because Tepegöz completely destroyed his victims, leaving no trace. Within a year, hundreds of people had disappeared. Tepegöz was now approaching villages. He would enter houses at midnight and kidnap people. By morning, only bloodstains remained. Fear engulfed the entire Oghuz tribe. When Dirsehan learned what his son was doing, he experienced great regret. "I wish I had killed him when he was born," he thought. But it was too late now. Tepegöz had become so powerful that normal weapons had no effect on him. His fairy wife told him, "I warned you, but you didn't listen. Now thousands of innocent people will die." Dirsehan didn't know what to do. Would he send an army to kill his own son? But the situation was so bad that he had no other choice. He needed to send his strongest warriors to stop Tepegöz. And the most suitable person for this task was Basat. Basat was the bravest and strongest warrior of the Oghuz tribe. He was still a young man, but his skill in battle was legendary. He feared no enemy, never backed down from any difficulty. But Tepegöz was different. Dirsehan called Basat and explained the situation. My son, I know this is a very difficult task, but only you can stop Tepegöz. If you kill him, all my treasures will be yours, he said. Basat replied, I don't want your treasure, dear Sehan, but I accept this task to protect innocent people. Tepegöz being a monster doesn't frighten me, because I'm also from Oghuz's lineage and I don't fear death. Basat went up to the mountains to find Tepegöz. He only took his sword and bow with him, because against Tepegöz, his greatest weapons were courage and intelligence. Strength alone wouldn't be enough. After searching the mountains for 3 days, he found Tepegöz's cave. The cave entrance was filled with human bones. A terrible smell was spreading. When Basat entered, Tepegöz was waiting for him. Who are you, little man? Said Tepegöz. His voice shook the mountains. I am Basat, from the Oghuz lineage. I've come to stop you, said Basat. Tepegöz laughed. You're going to stop me? What kind of madman are you? Tepegöz looked at Basat with his single eye. He was trying to turn him to stone, but Basat was prepared. He fixed his eyes on the ground and avoided Tepegöz's spell. Then he moved quickly and wounded the giant's leg with his sword. Tepegöz began howling in pain. For the first time, someone had been able to harm him. In fury, he tried to catch Basat, but Basat was very agile. He was hiding inside the cave, predicting the giant's movements in advance. The battle lasted for hours. Basat wounded Tepegöz in several places but couldn't kill him. The giant's skin was too thick, his bones too strong. He realized he couldn't be killed with normal weapons. He needed to develop a different strategy. Basat retreated and began to think. How could he kill Tepegöz? Then an idea came to him. The giant's only weakness was his eye. If he could blind the eye, he would lose his magic. But how would he attack the eye? Tepegöz constantly protected his eye. Then Basat made a very clever plan. He would deceive Tepegöz, pretend to surrender to him. He returned to the cave and said to Tepegöz, You are very powerful. I cannot oppose you. I surrender. But I have one request. Before you kill me, fulfill my last wish. Tepegöz asked curiously, What do you want? Basat said, After I die, no one will know my story of courage. You will also live alone. But if you accept me as a friend, I will remain loyal to you. Tepegöz thought. He really was very lonely. He had never had a friend. Maybe Basat really wanted his friendship. All right, I trust you, but if you try to deceive me, I will kill you in the most merciless way, he said. Basat began working on his plan. He needed to gain Tepegöz's trust. He cooked for him, told him stories, acted friendly. Tepegöz slowly began to warm up to him. Days passed, and Tepegöz really began to trust Basat. For the first time in his life, he had a friend. Basat told him childhood stories, sang songs, played games. Tepegöz's human side began to emerge again. One night, Tepegöz said, Basat, you became my first friend. I will give you a secret. Only one thing can kill me. Basat asked excitedly, What is it? Tepegöz pointed to his eye and said, A fiery iron entering through my eye. Basat was very surprised. Why had Tepegöz told him his weakness? Because the giant really trusted him. He no longer thought Basat could harm him. This was the opportunity Basat had been looking for. That night, Basat put his plan into action. He lit a large fire in the cave. He told Tepegöz, Let's celebrate our friendship tonight. He began heating iron rods in the fire. Tepegöz didn't suspect anything. Late at night, when Tepegöz began to fall asleep, Basat sprang into action. He took the red-hot iron rod and silently approached Tepegöz. His heart was beating very fast. He had only one chance. Tepegöz was in deep sleep. His single eye was closed. Without breathing, Basat raised the iron rod and, with one move, plunged it into Tepegöz's eye. Tepegöz woke up with a terrible scream. His eye was burning. He could no longer see. Basat! How do you betray me? He howled. The cave ceiling shook from the sound waves. The blinded Tepegöz was frantically feeling around. He was trying to catch Basat, but couldn't succeed because he could no longer see. Basat took advantage of this opportunity and drew his sword. You killed innocent people, Tepegöz. Now it's time to pay your punishment, he said, attacking. The eye-blinded Tepegöz was defenseless. Basat's sharp sword pierced the giant's heart. Dying Tepegöz spoke his last words. Basat, you deceived me, but you were right. I had become a monster. Maybe this ending is better. Now, no one will fear me anymore. And then he added, in the depths of the cave, there's a great treasure. Take it. You deserve it. But don't forget, I was once an innocent child too. If my father had loved and understood me, maybe it would have been different. After saying these words, Tepegöz took his last breath. His terrible single eye closed forever. Basat began searching for the treasure Tepegöz had mentioned. In the deepest part of the cave, there really was a great treasure. But this treasure wasn't just gold and silver. It contained very valuable information, magical items, and secrets of the fairy realm. The most valuable piece was a letter written by Tepegöz's mother, the fairy maiden. The letter read, "My son, if you're reading this letter, it means your end has come. I want you to know that I loved you, but this was our fate." As Basat read this letter, he began to feel pity for Tepegöz. Maybe he really was a victim. Maybe if he had been raised differently, he could have been good. When Basat emerged from the cave, the sun was rising. The Tepegöz threat had finally ended. He returned to the villages and gave the good news. People welcomed him with joy. Now they could walk safely in the mountains. When Dir Sehan received news of his son's death, he felt both sad and relieved. Finally, this nightmare had ended. He kept his promise to Basat and gave him all his treasure. But Basat didn't use the treasure for himself. He distributed it to the families of Tepegöz's victims, because the real owners of that money should be the dead. The Tepegöz story isn't just a monster tale. This story teaches us very important lessons. The first lesson, how we raise children, is very important. Tepegöz might not have become a monster if he had been raised differently. Second lesson, revenge is never the solution. Tepegöz pursued revenge and ultimately destroyed himself. Third lesson, sometimes the greatest strength can be the greatest weakness. Tepegöz's power ultimately brought his end. The final lesson is, true heroism isn't being strong, it's doing what's right. Basat is a hero not because he was strong, but because he protected the innocent. The Tepegöz story is still relevant today, because there are Tepegöz characters in every society. People who use their power for evil, who harm innocent people. And there are also Basats in every society, heroes who courageously stand against evil, who protect the weak. Which side do you choose to be on? Is being powerful or being right more important? What was the biggest lesson this story gave you? Do you know similar legends? What's the percentage chance this story is real? Participate in our poll. And which legend would you like us to tell next week? Let us know in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and like the video. See you in the next video. Take care of yourselves.